But we start off tonight with a guy that I don't know if you guys know Brad Graham or not, but you should, because he is one of the preeminent content creators in 49er content creation world. He's a great follow on Twitter at Graham_SFN. He's got a very, very successful YouTube channel. You know him on Instagram at SF Niners. This is a man who's put out content that you have seen and read, and you may not even know it, but he's with us on the UMA guest line to talk all things Niners from his home. Brad, thanks for a few minutes. We do appreciate the time. Welcome to KNBR.
Larry, thanks so much for having me.
Well, Brad, it's great to have you. And one of the things, why don't you tell people, give people an idea of what you do around the 49ers and what kind of things you put out there. And as I said, I've described you as a good follow. I'll even say beyond a good follow, you're kind of an essential follow if you want to have Niners news and notes. You're all over everything throughout the week, and tell people how long you've been covering the team.
Yeah, so I started independently covering the Niners back in around 2017, and pretty much the number one goal is just to make sure that no stone goes unturned and any story or little tidbit or thing here or there that we can share with the fans and provide some insight on. It's always what I'm trying to do, and it's been a lot of fun doing it, and I've also had a lot of fun watching what you're doing, Larry, and it's been really cool to see how you've been able to grow your YouTube channel as well, and everything and the whole content community coming together. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Brad also contributes for Bleacher Report and does some amazing stuff. And now your background, you played offensive line, Brad, right? I mean, let's talk a little bit about your background, because you and I, Brad and I will geek it out during the draft and the lead up to the draft and after the draft on all these 7th-round draft choices and 5th-round draft choices, because you're like me. You've got that, you'll crunch it and you'll watch the film and you'll roll it back and forth. But give us an idea about your background, because I know offensive line play is something that's really, special to you.
Yeah, man. I grew up playing offensive line, bigger kids. So hey, we're going to put you on the O-line. So I found a home kind of at center and guard, and was able to play in high school and obviously played through college. And it's really where I gained a lot of my working fundamental knowledge of the sport. And so what's been really cool is just being able to take all of those things that I learned while playing and then actually applying them to how we talk about sports. And just like you said, Larry, I remember we did a show, one of our first shows we did together, I think it was after the 2022 draft. I think we did over an hour on just undrafted free agents, because we love the developmental side of the game. It's really easy to spot the really good, fast, strong guys, right? But it's being able to see the intangible qualities and how those might come to fruition, like a Brock Purdy, because I remember you, Larry, you're talking to me about this Mr. Irrelevant guy, how he looks really good at OTAs. And I'm like, okay, we'll see. And sure enough, here we go. We're talking about Brock Purdy being a franchise quarterback. You saw it early. And I think those are the things that are special about being someone who, you've been around it at a high level. I played football, and just taking those things and being able to dig a little bit deeper and just really enjoy the game for what it is. And one of my favorite things is the developmental side. And it's really cool watching and seeing it in players and then seeing it come to fruition. I think that's some of the funnest part about it.
Well, what do you think of Kansas City's interior offensive line? It's funny, you go back to the Schottenheimer Chiefs from decades ago, and you know what, they were good inside once upon a time. I mean, they, some of the names escape me now, but the guys that are doing it right now: Trey Smith at right guard, Creed Humphrey, probably as good as almost any center in the game, Joe Tooney, the former Patriots, at left guard. They had Nick Allegretti in the Super Bowl. He moved on to the Commanders, but that interior is a real problem, I would imagine. And not Dom Pooney, but Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott inside are going to have to contend with those 3 interior guys. Is this the premier interior offensive line you think in the game right now?
I definitely think it's at the top. And I mean, you mentioned the names. I think Creed Humphrey right now has got to be the best center in the game. And you talk about Trey Smith and what he was able to do for whatever reason, slid to the 6th round. Kansas City picks him up, and he's been nothing but a stud. 6'6", dude moves extremely well. And then you combine those two guys with a veteran like Joe Thuney, who has just loads of experience, and those three have combined to make a extremely stout interior offensive line group. And you said it, I think they're one of, if not the best three interior offensive line pairing in the entire league, because they are just so good, not only at being able to execute their individual jobs, but how they work together. And, offensive lines about sliding protection, passing off stunts, doing all those different types of things. And those guys just work at the highest of levels. And, it's going to be a challenge for that interior offensive or interior defensive line for the San Francisco 49ers for sure.
Yeah, no question. If you go back, Brad, to last year in the AFC title game, Chiefs on the road against the Ravens, I kind of felt like, Kansas City just said, you know what, we're not going to run outside the guards. We're just going to run in the A-gaps. I mean, especially in the beginning of that game, everything was right down the middle. They really believe in their interior, and they took it to the Ravens, and they just took very little risks with the football. And to me, that's the one thing. I mean, the Niners and the Chiefs, I asked Kittle this week at his locker, I'm like, hey, I'm tired of watching you guys lose these games. What is the key to beating this team? I'm getting frustrated watching you guys lose 4 games in a row to the Chiefs and 6 out of 7. He's like, we got to run the ball 30 times. And that's one of our keys. We got to run it at least 30 times. And he's like, we got to not turn it over. We've turned it over a lot. And I looked it up. In the last 3 matchups, Niners have turned it over 7 times. And you're not beating Kansas City if you turn it over 7 times. So, I mean, to me, that's kind of where this thing starts. It's like Kansas City doesn't turn it over. And so if you turn it over, you're just falling, you fall into a trap and in a hole that you just can't dig yourself out of. So to me, it's like, I know the Niners were +3 in turnovers last week against Seattle. I'm not saying they need to be +3 to win, Brad, but I think they need to be I think they need to be even or +1 to win. I don't think they're going to beat the Chiefs if they're -1, -2, definitely not -3.
Well, I think you and Kittle are barking up the right tree, because I think when you play formidable opponents like the Kansas City Chiefs, who are coming into Levi's Stadium undefeated, it's about stealing possessions. You got to make every possession count, but also on top of that, you got to steal one here or there. And I really do think one of the keys of this game, and kind of what Kittle was alluding to by rushing the football 30 times, it's also grinding out drives. That means you're getting first down after first down, which means Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Xavier Worthy are sitting on the sideline watching the 49ers move up and down the field. So I think it's a combination of all those things, and rightfully so, is you can't give Patrick Mahomes more opportunities than he already has. And on top of that, you have to take advantage of your opportunities. And also a little bit of keep away, I think, would go a long way, right? It's about grinding out that clock, owning time of possession, making sure that you're putting drives together, long drives together, keeping your defense fresh so that when they're running around chasing Patrick Mahomes, they get ample time to recover and stay fresh throughout that game. So I agree 100%. I think when you're playing such a high-caliber team like this, who plays well on all 3 phases, they really play complementary football, you kind of have to disjoint that a little bit, and you can really do that by owning the ground game and just really taking advantage of those opportunities and solidifying yourself as we can move the ball at will. And if you can establish that early, I feel like that's how the 49ers really keep gain momentum early, but really are able to keep it throughout the game.
Brad Graham with us on the UMA guest line as we talk a little bit about Niners Chiefs, which of course we will see on Sunday at Levi's. All right, how does Andy Reid attack the 49ers? He's got Kareem Hunt and Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the backfield. He's got Mahomes. He's got Kelce. Juju Smith-Schuster. They got the 4-2-1 burner from Texas, Xavier Worthy. They got Justin Watson. They have McCole Hardman. I'm very concerned about Devondre Campbell and his ability to stand up. I think they're going to attack right there. But what do you think? I mean, if you're Reed, where do you want to attack the Niner defense?
So this is where I maybe invoke a little bit of my 49ers PTSD a little bit. I think back to that 2022 regular season matchup game. The San Francisco 49ers just traded for Christian McCaffrey, and Mecole Hardman goes for 3 touchdowns on end arounds. Obviously, we've seen Xavier Worthy have similar success on end arounds as they're getting to the edge and winning. That's kind of where I really want to make sure that the 49ers defense is not getting beat to the outside, because even though you don't have Hollywood Brown and you don't have Rashee Rice, they still have speed in Xavier Worthy. Mecole Hardman's fast as well. And, Juju Smith works really well over the intermediate parts of the field. I just really feel like you can't get beat to the edges. You really have to funnel everything back into the teeth of your defense. You really have to funnel everything back into Fred Warner. And obviously, I do think one thing that I really would like to see is continuing to see Diamador Lenore playing outside in base downs, but kind of like similar to what we saw against Seattle, is you kick Demo into nickel and then you put Renardo Green on the outside. I really do, and you and I think have talked about this before.
Yeah.
Like we're big on Renardo Green. Renardo Green pre-draft, after the 49ers got him, and now especially with what we've seen from him, not only through training camp, but now in some real big moments in a game that you had to have, and him making big plays. I would love to see Renardo Green on the outside, and then when you put Diamador Lenore in that nickel spot, he's like a speed linebacker. He is. We know how physical he is.
Yeah.
We know he likes to talk, but he backs it up. And I think if you can kind of get into that rhythm of the defense, I think that would help with the end arounds and potential end arounds, and trying to beat the 49ers on the outside with speed, and just continuing to funnel everything back into the center of the defense where you have the most bodies. And to me, obviously they're going to want to pound it with Kareem Hunt. They're going to want to work it over the middle to Juju Smith-Schuster, and of course, Travis Kelce is going to be the top target for them in this game. But when it comes to stopping the run game, just got to keep everything, I think, centralized. Obviously, they're running behind those 3 phenomenal offensive linemen, but man, we know that this defense swarms. They have a better chance at, I think, neutralizing some of what the Chiefs want to do on the ground.
Yeah, Renardo Green is a dog, and you talk to him for 5 minutes, and you're like, this kid's not afraid. He's not afraid. And in college, he went up against Malik Neighbors. He went up against all the best players and did a nice job. I mean, and I talked to him at his locker. He's serious as a heart attack, man. This guy, some guys are young and they're fun-loving and they're loose. Not Renardo, man. Renardo's all business. He is all business. Very serious guy, but a really good football player, and I think a hell of a draft pick in the second round. I love that pick when it was announced. A lot of people thought he was going in the 4th round. The Niners, some people said, they reached. You know what? The guy played at Florida State, and he's a really good corner. Reach this. You know what I mean? That's what I would say to those people. But
I thought he was the best press man corner coming out of the entire draft. I was like,
I know that you said that to me before the draft. You're like, I love this kid as his press man corner. Now, the big question I got about the Niner defense against the Chief offense is, one, what do you do with Mahomes? Do you blitz Mahomes and give him defined reads? The Niners defense, I don't know if I would trust giving him defined reads like that. And then the other issue I see is that Kansas City's offense is 4th in the NFL with 801 yards of yak, right? They're one of only 2 teams in the top 5 who've only played 5 games. The other teams have played 6. The Niners have really struggled with opposing receivers getting yak yards against their defense. They've allowed 724 yak yards thus far. It's 6th most in the NFL. They allowed 171 yak last week to Seattle, and they've given up over 100 yak yards in 5 of 6 games this year. So somebody's got to wrap. Somebody's got to bring somebody to the ground. I mean, they've got to. It's one thing to allow a reception, but you've got to bring that guy down. They can't live anymore with those yak yards.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, we started this conversation talking about the interior offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs. I really think you got to attack these tackles. Wanya Morris coming in, filling in for Kingsley Suamataia, who, the 49ers, they traded their pick to the Chiefs. They take Kingsley. We heard all about that, but they moved towards Wanya Morris, who I think has a lot of promise as a young tackle, but that's the key factor is he's young, heading into year 2 out of Oklahoma, former third-round draft pick. And then you got Jawan Taylor on the opposite side, who, if I'm not mistaken, and you probably have the answer to this, I think it was like the most he had the most holding penalties last year, I think Taylor was.
Except on Super Bowl Sunday, he was flawless.
Of course.
Though people did see him bear hug Nick Bosa, but they're still seeing the talk is they're still seeing other people. Unbelievable.
So
that was a tough one to watch.
Definitely, but I would say, man, yes, they're stout on the interior of that offensive line, but man, if you can attack these tackles with Bosa, with Leonard Floyd, Sam Okiwanu. I mean, he has been a revelation for what we expected of him at the beginning of the season. If you can really attack those edges and keep Patrick in the pocket, I really think that's, the 49ers' Achilles heel is when you get these mobile quarterbacks out on the run outside of structure and they're able to either pick up first downs with their legs or make those, back-breaking throws across the field, outside of structure. I think if you can contain Patrick Mahomes within the pocket and you can squeeze him with the edges and at least at minimum force him up, and hopefully guys like Evan Anderson, we'll see if Kevin Givens goes. I know he's questionable for this game, but Malik Collins and all these other defensive tackles, if they can fill that void, that I think there's really no stopping Patrick, right? He is who he is. He's one of the best for a reason, if not the best quarterback in this game right now. So it's more about containment than anything else. He's going to go off. He's going to get his plays. He's going to be able to make things happen, but it's about limiting those opportunities and I think really just keeping him in the pocket and squeezing him and forcing him to make tight window throws, forcing him to really be on point with his timing rather than breaking outside of structure and killing you with his legs or killing you with those phenomenal, just wild throws that he makes.
Hey, one last one for you, Brad. We appreciate you joining us. Brad Graham with us on the UMA guest line as we look ahead to Sunday. Let's flip the card and talk about the Niners offense against this Chiefs defense. Kansas City, I mean, the one thing when I watch the All-22, I mean, this stands out. They clutch, they grab, they muck everything up at the line of scrimmage. Spags dials up an array of blitzes. They play a lot of man behind it. They're excellent at disrupting the rhythm of the quarterback. They got premier guys on all 3 levels, right? Jones is a monster Hall of Famer. Bolton, I think, is also a tremendous player, the inside backer, and then McDuffie's as good as it gets. But to me, it's interesting because Spags is very smart defensive coordinator, and he will strategically choose to blow up a few key plays every game with overloads to one side or slot pressures. He's just really good at it. And I was asking Shanahan today, how do you get explosives against this defense? Because they don't give them up, and they just don't beat themselves. So if you're going to beat Kansas City, you got to beat them. What do you think? What's the game plan if you're Shanahan, and what's Spagnuolo's game plan? Do you think he blitzes Purdy because Purdy's been good against the blitz?
I think Spags is going to stick what works best for him, and obviously there is something that the 49ers have shown on tape a couple times where they get caught sliding protection towards the weak side and they overload the backside, and it just creates this numbers mismatch. So I would assume that Spags is trying to identify what that is and attack that, because we have seen the 49ers kind of get caught in that look every now and again. And I think of that interception that Purdy had against the Cardinals. They got caught sliding protection to the wrong side. They overloaded the backside, and they got a free rusher, right? Purdy didn't see him, didn't check the hot, and it created a hit where he got hit and the ball fluttered in the air, interception. I think there's a couple things, but I think it really starts with having sound protection up front, making sure that you are not getting caught in this look where that I just described. And on top of that, of course, Brock Purdy's seeing everything. As long as Brock is alert to where the free rusher is coming from, I've got all the faith in Brock that he's going to be able to either, one, make a guy miss or make a play very quickly and get the ball out of his hands. And I think that also plays into a part of how you try to neutralize this blitz is you just get the ball into your playmaker's hands, whether that's tunnel screens, quick screens, slants. Just get these things. If you feel the blitz and you sense the blitz, try to throw right off the backside of that and really start to attack the voids in the defense that they're leaving by sending extra players. And I think that's really where Brock thrives in some aspects is he's able to identify where the pressure's coming from, and so he knows where the void is, and then he attacks that void. So I think to be able to cool off the blitz, it's really showing early that they're not going to be taken advantage of from that aspect, and Brock is going to continue to get the ball out fast. And then we've seen teams where they'll rotate into coverage more often. And I remember Spags talking about it. They were talking about how they were throwing zone at him in the Super Bowl, and he was just picking them apart. And they had to make adjustments. Yeah, had to go to more man. And so I would imagine we'll see more man to begin with. But, again, if Purdy's been playing, especially like how he played against the Seattle Seahawks, and with free rushers, by being able to make them miss, baiting them in the pocket, baiting them to their angles and bailing and creating outside of structure. And, man, if this offensive line with Dominic Pooney at right guard, you know, he's been phenomenal up until this point. Would love to see him versus Chris Jones. I think that's one of the biggest matchups I'm looking forward to in this game. But I really do think it's about getting the ball out of your hands quickly, clear reads, and not getting caught with overload pressures.
I don't want to put too much on the kid, but I like Pearsall to have a nice little bust-out performance. I think he's a red zone difference maker. I think people are going to see it. I think he was drafted with the Chiefs in mind and with man coverage in mind, and I think they're going to dust him off on Sunday, and I can't wait for it. I know the kid's super excited. He's a great guy, man. He really is a great guy. Haven't had a chance to interview him yet in the locker room, but we will, and I'm looking forward to Sunday, Brad. Hey, man, that was an awesome breakdown. We appreciate you jumping in, and hopefully we'll do it again throughout the year. Brad's a great follow on X, and everybody give him a follow. He's fantastic, and Brad, always good stuff, man, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Larry, I appreciate it so much. Thank you, man.
Have a great night. Brad Graham stopping by, and one of the best content creators in Ninerland for sure. And you can follow him on Instagram. You can follow him on YouTube. You can follow him on X.